to be a lot of confusion about pH, GH and KH. Most people tend to have their head around pH. pH is basically the acid versus alkaline levels of the water, and it's sort of the first thing you tend to learn. Now here in Sydney we tend to have fairly alkaline water. In reference to our pH tends to be about 7.8. Now there's various things that we can do to lower our pH, such as things like driftwood. They're going to help reduce the pH, and there are various acid products that we can use to lower the pH. Then the low surface agitation of these tanks is probably going to contribute to that as well. The amount of good bacteria growing in the filter are all going to release acids, which are also going to contribute to that. So pH is something that most people understand, and it's very easy to get your head around. Here in Sydney, if you want your pH to go up, the easiest thing is just do a water change. If you want a pH to go down, then you either use some of the pH products that make the water go down, or add driftwood and stuff like that. That's going to release tannins and reduce your pH. And ultimately you could use CO2 to make your pH go down. Now, KH in Sydney is very important. And the reason why KH in Sydney is very important is it's often nearly zero. And carbonate hardness is an essential element, particularly for most fish, some more than others. And also it's important for the good bacteria. And because Sydney tap water tends to have a high pH and are typically close to 0 KH, the addition of any pH down products or anything that makes the pH go down is going to compromise the KH and often make it go to 0. So in Sydney, if you were going to check one thing, you'd be checking the KH, because you can assume the pH, especially with regular water changes, and KH is a major issue. For these sorts of fish, as long as your KH does not hit 0, you're pretty much okay. But for any of the harder water fish, you really want your KH up closer to something like 8. For the softer water fish, then as long as it's not 0. And if it is 0 over a long period of time, you can expect to have problems. So don't let it be 0. Now the other one is GH. So you'd be using a KH buffer to improve KH, whereas the GH you're usually using like a GH salt mix. And there's lots of products on the market that'll raise the GH. So typically for most freshwater tanks, there are 3 things that I'll add to the water when I do a water change. One is water ager, and that's to take out your chlorine and so forth. Second is a KH buffer. And then the next thing I'll add is a GH salt. So that'll come with salt, trace elements, minerals and various things. And you can get different ones from different environments. And all these tests are super simple and super quick to do. So even if you just test the water once a month, it'll really give you a guide on what you're doing. And you'll find that if your GH is, say, too low, the fish just won't be quite as